New England is one of the most recognizable regions in the United States, yet it is also one of the easiest to underestimate. On a map, it occupies a compact corner of the country, tucked between New York, Canada, and the Atlantic Ocean. But within that relatively small space are 6 states with a shared history, a distinct political tradition, and a cultural identity that has lasted for centuries. New England is made up of Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Vermont. Together, they form a region that is not just a geographic label, but a historical and cultural idea. It is a place associated with rocky coastlines, old town commons, colonial meeting houses, universities, fishing ports, mill towns, autumn forests, and some of the earliest turning points in American history. Geographically, New England sits at the northeastern edge of the United States. New York borders it to the west, while the Canadian provinces of Quebec and New Brunswick border it to the north and northeast. To the east and southeast are the Gulf of Maine and the Atlantic Ocean, which helped shape the region's economy and identity from the beginning. To the southwest, Long Island Sound separates parts of Connecticut from Long Island. These borders matter because New England is unusual among American regions. It has clear and consistent boundaries. Unlike vague regional terms such as the Midwest or the South, New England refers to a fixed group of 6 states. That clarity has helped preserve its regional identity across politics, economics, tourism, and everyday language. The region's largest and most influential city is Boston, the capital of Massachusetts. Boston is more than just a major city within New England, it is the region's historic and economic anchor. Greater Boston, often understood through the broader Boston-Worcester-Providence combined area, contains more than half of New England's total population. This wider urban network includes Worcester, the second-largest city in New England, Manchester, the largest city in New Hampshire, and Providence, the capital and largest city of Rhode Island. Although New England is famous for small towns and rural scenery, much of its modern life is concentrated in this metropolitan corridor. Universities, hospitals, technology companies, finance, ports, and government institutions all reinforce Boston's role as the region's central hub. New England's colonial history begins with some of the most famous English settlements in North America. In 1620, the Pilgrims established Plymouth Colony in what is now Massachusetts. It was the second successful English settlement in British America, after Jamestown in Virginia. Plymouth became deeply embedded in American memory because of its association with religious separatists, survival, and the mythology of early colonial beginnings. 10 years later, Puritans founded Massachusetts Bay Colony north of Plymouth. Unlike the smaller Plymouth settlement, Massachusetts Bay grew quickly and became a major center of English colonial life. These early colonies were shaped by religion, community discipline, local self-government, and the difficult realities of settlement in a region already inhabited by indigenous peoples. For more than a century after those settlements, New England was not an isolated peaceful outpost. It was part of a larger struggle involving European empires and native nations. Over 126 years, people in the region fought through 4 French and Indian wars. These conflicts were tied to the rivalry between Britain and France in North America, but they also involved indigenous alliances, especially between English colonists and their Iroquois allies on one side, and French forces and their Algonquian allies on the other. The wars reshaped borders, trade networks, military power, and colonial attitudes. By the end, English power had grown, French influence had declined, and New England colonists had become more experienced in organizing militias, defending towns, and thinking of themselves as politically capable. Communities. In the late 18th century, New England became one of the main centers of resistance to British rule. The conflict was not simply about taxes, but about political authority. Colonial leaders argued that Britain was enforcing taxes and trade rules without the consent of British American colonists. Rhode Island residents captured and burned a British Royal Navy vessel that had been enforcing unpopular trade restrictions. In Boston, protesters famously dumped British tea into the harbor, turning a dispute over taxation and monopoly power into a dramatic public act of defiance. Britain responded with punitive laws that stripped Massachusetts of self-government. Colonists called these measures the Intolerable Acts, and they helped push resistance from protest toward open rebellion. The first battles of the American Revolutionary War took place in New England in 1775. The fighting at Lexington and Concord marked the moment when political conflict became armed revolution. Within a year, British authorities were expelled from the region, and New England became a critical base of revolutionary activity. The region's tradition of town meetings, local militias, religious dissent, and suspicion of distant authority all contributed to its revolutionary role. Boston's occupation by British troops, the response of nearby towns, and the mobilization of colonial forces showed how local communities could become part of a broader political movement. New England did not create the revolution alone, but it gave the revolution some of its earliest sparks, symbols, and battlefields. After independence, New England continued to influence national life, especially through reform movements and industry. The region played a prominent role in the movement to abolish slavery in the United States. Its churches, newspapers, lecture halls, activists, and political networks helped spread anti-slavery arguments, although New England's own history was not free from connections to slavery and maritime trade. At the same time, the region became the first part of the United States transformed by the Industrial Revolution. Early industrialization centered on river valleys, especially the Blackstone and Merrimack. Water power drove textile mills, factories attracted workers, and older agrarian towns became part of a new manufacturing economy. New England helped turn the young republic from a farming society into an industrial one. The physical geography of New England helps explain much of its history. Southeastern New England includes a narrow coastal plain, where harbors, fishing, shipbuilding, and trade became important. Farther north and west, the landscape rises into rolling hills and worn-down mountains belonging to the northern end of the Appalachian system. These are not the towering young peaks of the American West, but older mountains shaped by erosion, forests, rivers, and long winters. The region's coastline is irregular, with bays, islands, peninsulas, and rocky shores that encouraged maritime life. Inland, the hills and valleys limited large-scale plantation agriculture but supported small farms, grazing, timber, and village settlement. New England's landscape made it both outward-looking toward the sea and inwardly organized around tight local communities. Rivers were especially important to New England's development. The Connecticut River cuts through the region from north to south, helping define settlement patterns and transportation routes. Many other rivers run from uplands toward the coast, and the Atlantic Fall Line lies close enough to the shoreline that cities could use water power without being far from ports. This combination was powerful. Raw materials, goods, workers, and capital could move between inland mills and coastal markets. Factory towns developed near falls and rapids, where moving water could power machinery. Before steam and electricity dominated manufacturing, geography gave New England a major advantage. Its rivers did not just decorate the landscape, they powered one of the earliest industrial transformations in American history. New England's local government also sets it apart. Each state is generally divided into small municipalities known as towns, and many of these towns have historically been governed through town meetings. In a town meeting, local residents can gather to debate budgets, bylaws, public works, schools, and other community matters. This model reflects a long tradition of direct local participation. It does not mean every person always had equal power in the past, but it did create a political culture in which community decisions were made close to home. Unincorporated areas exist mainly in parts of Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, while village-style governments common elsewhere are limited mostly to Vermont and Connecticut. Local identity remains unusually strong across the region. What makes New England fascinating is the way its identity combines opposites. It is associated with Puritan roots, but also with liberal politics and reform movements. It is remembered for small farms and village greens, but it also pioneered industrial cities and factory labor. It can appear culturally old and traditional, yet its history is filled with immigration, change, dissent, and reinvention. It is one of the U.S. Census Bureau's official regional divisions, but it is also something more personal, a place people recognize through accents, architecture, weather, foodways, sports loyalties, education, and memory. New England's importance is not measured by size. In a compact region of 6 states, it helped shape colonial America, revolutionary America, industrial America, and the continuing idea of regional identity in the United States. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.